Vroom!
Zoom.
Welcome to trying to convince Chinese fans to give me money because they're rich.
Addie, this is an F1 podcast.
It fits.
I guess you're right.
Paddock passes!
Hello and welcome to 17 to 1. My name is Julia and I know a lot about F1.
My name is Maddie, and today I know 6% because I actually watched the race on Sunday.
And we're so proud of her. And there was quite a lot happening in that race. So,
Like rain.
let's go over it. Light rain, light work.
Charles Leclerc's
No
seat
reason.
being wet due to water.
Water is wet. Is
Words
water
of
wet?
wisdom.
A great debate of our age.
K1 is available.
So, to go over this all, we're going to go over who are the champions of last weekend and who were the Crashouts.
Me.
Both literally
I
and
was the crash out.
metaphorically. To start, our champions, I think the most obvious one here is the literal champion, which was Lando.
And then we had our second place winner, who was Max Verstappen.
Verstappen.
And our third place, who, don't hate me fans, should have been Oscar, was in fact George Russell, our AI man.
Indeed. And his AI capabilities have come in handy. This is not the first time that George has miraculously ended up on a podium simply because the people in front of him have crashed. And it's that kind of luck that I adore about George. So
it's the driving. And then we're going to have our guest star, the heavy rain that kept coming in and out of the predictions of the F1 engineer speaking people.
Yes, indeed. Wait, so are you calling the rain a champion of the weekend?
Yeah, I'll call it a champion of the weekend. It created some chaos.
Okay, I do agree. I was just clarifying.
The rain brought its own shabanya.
Yeah, it really spiced things up for us. It got off the year to a great start, in my opinion. Maybe not for some of the drivers. But
I was about to say, I half agree. It was a great start for watchers. Unfortunately, the poor rookies really got hit hard with this.
Yes.
I am so proud of Ollie Behrman, though. He learned from Brazil. He stayed on the track.
Yes,
and Kimmy.
I
can't forget Kimmy. Little Kimchi.
Ollie and Kimmy. Little Kimmy Kimchi, little bear cub. I would say they are also definitely champions of this weekend. The way that Kimmy was just kind of slowly making his way all the way up. And at some point, the commentators were even like, when did Kimmy get there?
Yeah,
and the other one was like, yeah, he's just been passing people. Like,
yeah, it was very fun because I don't know how you watch it, but like sometimes I'm watching the race, but then if the commentators are talking about like overtaking or droning on about something, my eyes go to the side and I like to watch like so Kimmy is, for this race, he was the definition of slow and steady, wins the race in his book. For a rookie debut, P4 was a miraculous feat. Even P5 with that original penalty he had gotten was amazing for a rookie, especially since all his other rookie friends had trouble in the rain.
Yeah. He is officially the second youngest person to have scored points in an F1 race.
Who's the youngest?
I'm pretty sure. Who do you think is the youngest?
Right. How could I ask that? Lando Norris. I'm kidding. Max.
It is Max. Lando is in the top 6, 7. I don't know. He's in the top 10 somewhere. But yeah, Max's first. It used to be Lance after that. Ollie is
Lance?
also up there. Yeah, Lance started
Mr.
way
Gravel
younger than
Pit Trapper Lance Stroll?
Yeah, and Lance holds the record for second youngest podium holder still. So The more you know about Lance Stroll.
The Lance Stroll I have been watching is not the Lance Stroll that you are talking about.
Yeah. Which I would say Lance Stroll was also a winner this weekend. He stayed on the track. He got amazing points for his team. Boy was so happy. And he got more points than Ferrari combined. So our champions so far, we had Lando, Max, George, Ollie and Kimi, and Lance Stroll.
Lance
What a
Stroll.
wild roundup. And the Rain, our number one champion.
Our number one champion.
So we had a lot of champions in the weekend, but unfortunately we also had a lot of crash outs, both physically and metaphorically. Our first crash out was, of course, our little kid, Isaac Hajar, which was honestly just very tragic. I am like glad he has a bit of a reputation from like F2 and F3 of being like really hot-headed on the radio and like screaming and like swearing a lot, like how Yuki does. So everybody was expecting that kind of thing, and I thought it was like, I don't know, you could tell how torn up he was about it, and I'm glad that his reaction wasn't just like anger. He was clearly just mostly just really mad at himself and frustrated, which he was totally valid in feeling. And I'm glad Lewis's dad was there for him.
Yeah, I am glad. It does sound like there was a lot of people that were rallying behind him. Someone who we shall not name, who doesn't deserve even a mention. My heart broke for a lot of the rookies. They do have a lot of pressure on them as well, especially since they're rookies. And I can only envision as well, even though it's not probably something they could have prepared for, because you gotta experience things firsthand sometimes. I'm sure they felt like the crashes were their fault. And really, it's hard to say. I don't know if the same results would have happened had the roads been dry.
Yeah,
Um,
it was tough conditions for them. For most of them, this is like they've only driven an F1 car like a handful of times.
yeah, and the fact
None
that
of
this was
them,
like their first official race, like that's hard. That's hard.
yeah. I don't think most of them had any experience on the wet tires at all. And
I think the only one who might have had experience is Ollie because he was in the Brazil GP.
yes, but specifically, like it for every year they get new tires, and
Ah,
only Aston Martin and Haas brought them to testing. So the other teams had never used the intermediate or the wet tires before, to
oh,
my knowledge. I could be
smart.
slightly wrong on that, but that was the information that I was told.
Can we talk about Liam Lawson?
Liam Lawson was another crash out of this weekend, and I feel bad because his started even way before the race. You know, his practice times were really slow. He was not getting, he said he was comfortable in the car, just that he was going slow. And then
Hmm.
I think it was free practice. Oh, it was either two or three where there was a problem with the car. So they had to bring it back to the garage and they spent pretty the entire time fixing it. So he didn't get any practice time that day.
Hmm.
And then his qualifying went really poorly. And then his race went really poorly. So it was just like a whole bunch of bad days for Liam Lawson.
I am interested because we talked a little bit briefly about this Liam Lawson's journey in the sense to see him make his way from V carb cars that seem, pretty stable. They're nothing too extraordinarily special, but they don't always have problems like some other cars do. And I'm interested to see him make his way over to the Red Bull car and how he handles maybe the changes of the car. And because it's like what in the video you sent me of Alex is talking about. Max has a very specific driving. The cars are kind of like a little bit maybe catered to him, and how Alex's driving is different. So I'm interested to see how Liam will adjust or figure out his driving style in the Red Bull car itself, and if he will figure it out to help him, or if the Red Bull car is not a car for him, which would be very unfortunate. But
Yeah.
Yuki Tsunoda.
Who said that?
What a
Yeah,
weird sneeze.
unfortunately, what the ghosts are at it again. Yeah, unfortunately, Liam just he doesn't really have a choice, you know, if he can't make the car work for him, like tough luck, kid. You're gonna be out. So
Yeah.
um yeah, unfortunately Red Bull is just not a team where like he can afford to not make it work for him eventually. He does have a little bit, like I don't think they're gonna write him off based on this race at all,
Yeah.
especially the extenuating circumstances, the problems with the car, etc. But it's certainly not the way that he would have wanted to make a statement going into this season.
Yeah,
So,
because I don't think he is a terrible driver. Like we saw in the V carb car, like when he was driving, he was able to kind of maintain middle of the pack, like kind of edge up a little bit higher. So we saw that he does have the skills. It's not like he was put in a car and he was the wrong choice. He has the skills. Um, but like you said, will he be able to make it work, or will he unfortunately get the boot? Because Red Bull seems like they give a limited amount of chances, and once you run out of them, they are not like, oh, we'll just give you one. No, bye. So I'm interested to watch his career at Red Bull. Not even like, because I'm sure there are probably some people, not to even see a possible downfall, like I don't want to see that, but just to see how he will adjust. And I believe he will adjust. He'll figure out a way. He's Liam Lawson.
I'm Liam Lawson.
I'm Liam Lawson.
I agree. Which brings me to another, I would say, crash out of the weekend that was not a literal one, but one that made me sad was Yuki Tsunoda starting off the weekend very well and then only finishing in 11th place. I'm not entirely certain what happened there. I do think that during that squall with the rain where Oscar turned off, I think that Yuki was one of the ones that tried to have him stay out a little bit too long on the dry tires, to my recollection from
Mm-hmm.
4 days ago now. And that cost him because he kind of slipped and he lost places, and then he had to go get inter tires, so he had to do a pit stop, lost places there again. So that was just unfortunate strategy wise. And like the Ferrari team made like the same call to try to stay out longer. It's not like anybody
Yeah.
could have known at the moment what the better strategy was going to be.
Yeah.
It's just unlucky.
I would have loved to see a Yuki P3 podium. That would have
I
been
dream of the day.
magical. I dream of it. I think, you know, he has the capabilities, and it's just, I think, like you said, some of it comes down to the strategies of Racing Bull.
Yeah. And I think if he can qualify consistently the way he did this weekend, that's a very real possibility this year, because throughout that race, he did so well in maintaining his position. And part of that was due to he had Alex Albon behind him, and Alex Albon was holding off Lewis Hamilton, which was brilliant. Alex Albon, I forgot to mention him, another champion of the
Another
weekend.
champion.
So yeah, my original point, I think that if Yuki, like, he was able to hold him off, even later on in the race when he had Charles Leclerc right behind him, he was being a right menace to Charles Leclerc. So Yuki did a great job of holding his own, keeping his position. So I think that if he can consistently keep on qualifying well, it's going to be a good year for him. I think my last crash out from the race would be a wombo combo of the the Ferrari drivers and their race engineers, because
I love them. I don't know if I
they
told.
were both going through it. Lewis was constantly being like, "Stop talking to me. Stop telling me what to do. I
K1 is
don't
available. Do you
have
want K1?
information." He was like, "This is no." And then you had Charles getting the most unhelpful information. Although in his race engineer's defense, I do think that he was trying to indicate that it was like the water, like the drinking system that was leaking. Like it was water and not like some other type of fluid.
Yeah, wasn't there once a race where someone's like, "It's raining," and then people were like, "It's just the sweat in your visor." Wasn't
That
that
was
George
George.
actually?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like that was honestly, I love the radios so much because sometimes they are so out of context. Like I do think you are right of like, oh, like is your water bottle leaking or like something like that. But the clapbacks that the drivers and the engineers have at the same time, like, oh, okay, let's
Yeah.
add that to the words of wisdom. It's like, Charles, now is not the time.
Charles, now is the time. I'm like, you are driving at like 200 miles per hour in the rain. Your concentration has to be like so focused. How do you have the mental capacity to come up with these absolutely iconic one-liners? I adore it.
Probably because they aren't thinking about it. They're just like, I just got to say what's on my mind.
Probably he's like, I don't have the will or the means to hold this back.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, I'm interested to see the relationship with Lewis and his race engineer because kind of like what the commentator said. I don't know what your ESPN commentator said, but on F1 at least they were like, you know, Charles and Bono were together for a very long time, and so now it's just
Lewis, Lewis and Bono.
Lewis and Bono. Lewis and his engineer were together for a very long time. And so it is going to be an adjustment period. There cuz Lewis and his engineer spent time, they were able to probably like create shorthands and figure out what Lewis wanted or didn't want. Whereas I'm sure his race engineer is trying to figure out what he wants and then he doesn't want to hold back any information and then that could possibly have helped Lewis. Whereas Lewis is, at this point where he's like, I know what I'm doing. I've done this. So I do think like it's gonna be an adjustment period for them. But I do think when they can get over that hump, they'll probably be a good team.
I agree. I think that, like you said, it's they just need time. They are not super familiar with each other yet. They don't know what each other want, what their styles are. So that's
Wait,
only
sorry. Is the race engineer who is now Lewis's race engineer, is that Ricky?
yeah.
Oh, he was trying so hard. Everything's changed now. Lewis, be nice to Ricky. I'm gonna have another crash out because I just realized that.
I don't understand your emotional attachment to Ricky, but it's great.
It all started over one TikTok video too. Please be nice to Ricky. He might not put the right tires on, but like, please be nice.
Okay, so Maddie's personal crash outs aside, on to next weekend, we have the Chinese Grand Prix. Maddie, do you want to tell us where it is?
Shanghai, China. My
Oh, yeah.
boy's hometown, which is why, no harm to the racers of Ferrari, but that is why we kind of like Shanghai wants its hometown hero too. And contrary to belief, like I'm not from Shanghai, but I'm 2 hours out, so technically that's my hometown too. That's how it works.
Joke on you aside, for the people that actually are racing this weekend, if we run it through, which first of all, this weekend, Maddie, is a sprint race weekend. Do you remember what a sprint race is?
I learned that it's qualifying and not quarterfinals.
Okay, well, I'm proud of you. Sprint race is the like shorter race. So
Yes.
on
So they
yeah,
all go at the same time and they have shorter laps.
they have less laps.
Yes,
The
that's what I
laps are
meant.
the same length.
That's
Yes.
that's what I meant to say.
Yes. So they will have qualifying for the sprint race on Friday, and then they will have the sprint race on Saturday. And then they have another qualifying session for the main race, the big one, the Grand Prix.
What is the reason for doing a sprint race?
That is a great question that is highly debated. Because it depends on who you ask. The FIA's reason for implementing the sprint races, because they're still like a pretty new addition,
Mhm.
is more racing, more things for people to view, more opportunities to see people on track.
Okay.
If you ask people that are skeptics, they'll say that the reason is money,
Fair.
so that the FIA can profit off of it. If you ask the drivers, they don't really care. Max hates sprint races, so
Poor Max.
that's just about it. It's just the official reason is to give more time for or more opportunities to watch cars race.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that being said, we actually have two things that we can make predictions on. Who do we think is going to win the sprint, and who do we think is going to win the Grand Prix? Because it might not be the same.
Well, I've never seen a sprint race, so all my info is kaput.
They're
Please.
interesting because there's no pit stops typically because they're so short. So teams um, try to complete the whole thing on one tire,
Well,
which makes sense.
that's what I was gonna say too, is like results can change in the sense of like, for example, I don't know, Max might be really good at those long races, but when it comes to like having um less laps to complete, he might not be as good because he can't bide his time as much. It's like the exact same as like having a 100-meter swim versus like a 500. You have to pace yourself differently.
Yes.
Um
So that is actually a very key difference in performance that you see in the sprints and the races.
hmm,
Not for Max though. Max will benefit more from the sprint, I think, because the problem is everybody else kind of struggles a lot with degradation. So they're really good at the short stints, but
uh-huh.
then their tires degrade and then they lose grip and they start going slower. The
Hmm.
McLarens are very, very, very good at conserving their tires. They do not have as many issues with tire degradation.
That's something I've
So
noticed just in their races in general is like their ability to kind of stay out and push it a little bit longer as many racers are like kind of starting to pit and stuff like that.
yeah. So I think that the sprint format will definitely be an opportunity for those teams to, like Max, to potentially score more points
Hmm.
versus the Grand Prix. I think that we'll likely see the McLarens dominate the Grand Prix more again, but for the
Mm.
sprint race, as long as they can qualify well and start out on top, I think it's going to be a better opportunity for other teams to get to the top.
Um,
So if I ask you sprint race, who's coming in P1, first name that comes to your head?
Max Verstappen,
Okay, P2.
Lando Norris,
First name, P3.
Oscar.
Okay. Interesting.
McLaren, like you said, I think they are a very stable team. Red Bull, Max is very stable. Even when he does have issues with the car, he is able to kind of remain stable. And I just, at least, it's hard to say because I think the opening race to the whole season was a conundrum. Um, but
Yeah.
I
It's
think that,
hard to base anything off of it.
yeah, so going off of that, but I do think Ferrari might have some kinks to work out behind the scenes. So that's why they're a little bit lower on my totem pole. Would love to see Kimmy sneak in there. I think that would be wild.
Can you imagine if Kimi Antonelli won the sprint race this weekend? Kimi has 2 more races, I think. So he has China and Japan. And if he gets on the podium, he'll officially become the youngest podium sitter.
That'd be
And
insane.
if he wins, he'll become the youngest winner. Now, we don't include sprint race wins in like the same data as race wins,
Yeah.
but he could become the youngest sprint race winner
Would love to see
ever.
it. Would love to see it.
We
Um,
stand Kimi.
I would love to see it. So
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm very interested. You know, would love to see Yuki P1,
You know?
Alex Albon P1 or P2. You know, I want to see my Asians win.
It is Alex Albon's birthday this weekend. It is his birthday on Sunday, which means he can join a very exclusive group of drivers who have podiumed or won on their birthday.
I
And that's
unfortunately
all I'm going to say on the matter. I refuse to speak on this any more than I already have.
my prediction for Grand Prix finals race. We're gonna get an Alex P3. I think we're gonna get a Max P2. And I think we'll have a land. No, you know what? An Oscar P1.
A redemption arc.
A redemption arc.
But I think that this year is interesting because, like last year, predicting an Alex Albon podium was like a pipe dream, you know? It was like a haha, so silly.
Like, haha,
Really
his mirror just fell off. Okay, cool.
Yeah, but like this year, like it's actually possible. He got P5. These are possibilities.
So yeah, let's go sprint race. What are your predictions?
Oh god. Okay, you have to give me no time to think about my answers
Okay,
because
first
otherwise I'm
one
gonna
off the top
overthink
of your
it.
head.
Oscar.
Second one off the top of your head.
I went to say Oscar again. Shit. Max.
Third one.
Carlos.
All right. So we got P1 Oscar for sprint race, P2 Max, and then P3 Carlos. Excellent. Now we're moving on to our final round. Which ones do you think? We're going to go backwards. P3, what do you think?
God, you messed me up. Lando.
Okay. P2, what do you think?
Charles.
Charles, all right. P1, who do you
I don't know
think?
where that came from. Lewis.
Okay. We're going for a
Oh
Ferrari win.
I guess we're going for a 1-2, even after I said they were cursed.
All right, so then we're going P3, we got Lando. P2, we got Charles. P1, we have Lewis.
All right. I'll have to write this down. We'll run it back next week and we'll see how these end up coming out.
It'll be interesting, that is for sure.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for this week's episode of 17 to 1. I hope you enjoy the race this weekend. See you next time.
Bye-bye.